Hey everybody, this is Kate Chasman. This video is about ADHD, and it's sort of the first of a series. And it's if you're starting to suspect, or your child's teacher might be saying something that might lead you to believe that they may have ADHD. This is just to get you to start to think about why you might think that, and what the next step would be if you think that that might be the case. So sometimes people will think their child has ADHD, or a teacher might suggest talking to a pediatrician if your child's experiencing these symptoms, and I'll just list them off, okay? One might be a short attention span. They have a hard time focusing on certain activities for a long period of time. They might be a little bit hyperactive. They might be physically, verbally, or emotionally hyperactive. So there's different, hyperactivity looks different for different kids. They may have some issues with impulsivity. So that might be verbal, or it might be like they, grab things from friends, or, physical impulsivity. They might fidget or be restless. They might have disorganization or prioritization issues, meaning they might have a hard time just keeping their desk clean, keeping track of their belongings. They might have poor time management. They might have mood swings, working memory, shortened working memory sometimes, trouble multitasking. I'm sorry, I'm reading the list. They might have trouble with emotional regulation sometimes. They might get angry or upset very easily. Trouble completing tasks, highly distractible, or difficulty waiting their turn. They might also, and when I say distractible, it could be a hard time focusing on one thing, or it could be, they stare out the window and are sort of off in another world. So if you're noticing these things with your child, something you want to think about is, are you seeing them in all environments, or in most environments, meaning at home, at school, at soccer practice, wherever they might be. Also, has it been a long period of time? If those aren't the cases, if it hasn't been something that you've noticed their whole life, or if it's a new activity, you might be just noticing it for the first time. But if it's something that you've sort of seen before, it's worth talking to your pediatrician. A doctor needs to diagnose it, so it either needs to be like a psychologist that who can prescribe medicine, or a pediatrician. And it's preferable if you have a person who knows your child and could really spend some time eliminating some other potential things it could be, because those issues that I just described, those symptoms, are for other things as well. Some of those could be visual hearing impairment, autism, sensory issues, something called PANDAS, which is a result of, it's PANDAS, and it's a result of having like a virus, like a strep throat. Learning disabilities, developmental delay, trauma, anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, which can also be caused by needing a tonsillectomy. So there are other things that can be causing the same symptoms. So don't jump to a conclusion that it's definitely ADHD. It could be something else. And that's why you really want to talk to your pediatrician, so they can help you eliminate other potential things it could be. Because the next step, if they are given a diagnosis, is you would consider whether you want to medicate your child or not. And, you don't want to medicate your child for something that they don't have. So you want to make sure that they truly are dealing with that. Also, when you get the diagnosis, it'll come, the way it happens is the doctor will talk to you and interview you some, and probably your child as well. And then you'll get this little, it's like a checklist, and you'll fill it out as the parent. You'll give it to the teacher, and you'll give it to any other adults who spend a lot of time with your child. And it just asks a series of questions so that they can really drill down on what's happening. Another thing to know is that I have a little website, and I have on my website, I have something about executive function survey. It doesn't mean you do or don't have ADHD, but it just will give you some ideas of all the executive functions, which ones your child is are the weakest for your child, and the ones you can maybe help support them with, which is also associated with ADHD. When you get your diagnosis, you'll also have, they'll tell you whether it's ADHD with impulsivity, ADHD with hyperactivity, or inattentive. Inattentive is probably the hardest one to diagnose because they tend not to be the kids who are like the super hyperactive, obvious kids. They're the ones who are sort of daydreaming out the window. So don't, if you have a daydreamer, and not that means they have ADHD, but with some of these other symptoms, that's worthy of a look, because a lot of times teachers won't necessarily notice that because they're not as much of a presence in the classroom, shall we say. And the other thing to know is that it is genetic, so there's a very good chance that if your child gets a diagnosis, you'll start to realize, either you might have it, or their biological, their parent might have it, or there might be an aunt or a cousin or uncle or something like that. That's pretty common, and a lot of people I know have been diagnosed as an adult after their child was diagnosed. So that is pretty common. So don't be alarmed if that's the case. And what you need to realize is that you've had all these strategies your whole life you've been doing, that you just didn't know that that's what you were doing them for. So you're probably all good, but you could certainly go to your doctor if you want to. I have noticed that there's a lot of stuff on like TikTok about, diagnosing yourself on these surveys and then getting medication. And I don't recommend doing that. I think you really need to talk to a professional and make sure that you get the right diagnosis. So that's my intro to ADHD, and I'm going to do several more videos, hopefully to help guide you guys, and just give you some tips along the way that might help troubleshoot any potential problems. Thanks.